Welcome to May 27th of our CNAB general meeting. It's going to welcome new CNABBERS, but it looks like it's just the same old crew today. So thank you everyone for showing up week after week instead. We appreciate old CNABBERS too. How about that? Next up on the agenda is the claim specification status. The status is basically the claim spec seems to be fine so far. I've been implementing all the changes in CNAB Go, and then subsequently in Porter, and also looking to implement in Duffel too. So like whatever Porter and Duffel would need, what would that look like? What would you have to do in CNAB Go? And so it looks like I've been dark. It's because I don't want to, it's like a really big, pretty much rewrite, unfortunately, because it changes how the runtime uses claims, and then also all of the persistence for claims, and adds this new concept results and how we persist and work with outputs. I'm getting to the point where I should have a PR pretty soon. I'm hoping by the end of this week. So I apologize it's taken this long, but hopefully there's a light at the end of the tunnel for that. The idea is that more of the logic for dealing with claims should be taken off of the tooling and put into CNAB Go, so that there should be like, if you want to just do the default, you should be able to do a lot of it without having to re-implement it over and over, because there was a lot of basically copy paste between the tools. But if you want to be able to use, for example, just the run logic, but you don't want any of the persistence layer, you can still do that. That's the idea. So you shouldn't have to be locked in with using everything if you don't want to. I don't hear any screaming, so I'm gonna move on to the next item. The security spec. Radu, Trishank, you want to update us on that?
Yeah, sure. As Radu mentioned earlier, well, at the beginning of the meeting, we think that the security spec is ready. It's been 1.0 working draft for a while. I think about the only thing we might have missed, I don't think it's a major issue, it's just making sure that we handle air gap scenarios. Thanks to your invitation, Caroline. That really made us think about it. But other than that, I think we should be good to ask, like Radu said, and Radu should talk about this, to ask the next general meeting to take a vote, I guess.
Yeah, that's the general idea. We were thinking about doing it, calling the vote today, but given that we joined the invitation on the air gap meeting, we think there are a couple of small notes that we could add to the security spec based on that, on feedback from that meeting. So we think it's worth going over the spec one more time and make sure there's nothing left. We don't think there's anything major there, but we want to make sure that we have everything mentioned about air-gapped environments before calling the vote. We really want to call the vote next general meeting, so 2 weeks from now. If it would also make sense for people to share the security spec with other people they want to review it before calling the vote, I think that would really be helpful. I'll make noise in the Slack channel for that as well later in this week.
Yeah, and I think this time, please take a look and please be as critical of it as you can. We don't want you to blindly trust us. We might have made, we might have missed a thing here and there. We think it's solid from a security point of view, but it's possible that we might have missed a particular use case, let's say. All the considerations like for air gaps, for example. So please take a look at it with a critical eye and let us know.
Do you have any additional reviews you need, or are all the spec views completed?
Well, technically, people people LGTM'd merging the drafts into the spec, and we were very clear that that was a draft status. So I assume people were a bit went a bit easier on the review as compared to a real review for 1.0. So that's what I'm saying. I would like for people to have a really critical review before next general meeting, so that we could have a clear yes, no, yay, nay kind of votes for the spec. Similar how we do with the other specs as well, with the core and subsequent
So this
versions of the spec.
This is a formal announcement that it is time to pay attention, you people.
Well, technically, we've been asking people to pay attention for a while now, but yes.
Yes, but that's just buffer attention. You got to have an attention buffer.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll put that in caps in the
This
notes.
time we mean
There you
it,
go.
folks.
It's caps. Yeah, put it in notes in in caps.
Let's bold it too. That's okay. Is there anything else for that before we move on?
Not on my side.
Okay. The next one, you'll definitely want to pull this up. I'm sorry I can't share, but Zoom,
Look
I don't
now.
have host rights. But pull this up and let's scroll down. All follow with me. Scroll down to the comment underneath the main op here. So I was working on Porter has two commands. One's publish and one's copy. Publish is for when you're bringing a bundle down from a registry, zipping it up, moving it across an air gap, and then republishing it to another registry on the other side of the air gap. And then copy is when you have two registries that don't have like a network gap, and you just want to take a bundle and copy it between the two registries. And I was running into discrepancy in whether or not it gets put in the same repository, repository or not. And you can see the namespacing, like it goes under example.com org2, and either it was called WheelGap installer or it was called WhaleGap, which is the name of the bundle, WhaleGap installer. And this was an inconsistency that was confusing. And Roddy can probably explain this a lot better, but what we kind of dug into and found out is that because of how, what was it? It was like an artifact, essentially, of what we needed in order to get CNAB to OCI to work in the air gap scenario. Because we don't have like a local registry or anything, we had to push it up to a registry first, right? Roddy, help me out here a little bit, because I think I'm kind of stuttering out.
Yeah, specifically, there are two sets of libraries used for the two commands.
Yeah.
One of them is the pivotal image relocation, which does two things. One, it copies images between registries, and it's able to take a set of local layers, blobs, and push them into a repository, to an image repo. So, and then copy uses CNAB to OCI, which pushes a bundle as an OCI index and all the images into the same repository. So essentially there are two wildly different behaviors for these two commands. The copy command, pivotal image relocation will push each image into its own repository. So it will mirror whatever the structure of the images were in the source registries or registry, while CNAB to OCI will push the bundle together with all of the referenced images into a single image repository, in a single OCI repository, and reference everything, bubble everything up as an OCI index. So it turns out that we can't really get rid of either of them because they serve two different purposes. At least that's my view of that, and people feel free to combat that. But I think there are two different use cases that they appear organically as well as two different scenarios. That's from a user story perspective. From a technical perspective, we kind of still need both of them right now, as the pivotal image relocation also deals with pushing blobs, pushing layers of images that have not been pushed to a registry before. So they take something from a disk and they push the layers to a registry, even though you don't have Docker or the registry locally. At least that's my understanding of it. So if you wanted to get rid of pivotal image relocation, we would have to implement the layer copy functionality in CNAB to OCI. And I'm not particularly sure how easy it is to do that in the current form of both libraries, and if it makes sense to do it in the time frame for, well, whatever time frame you're looking at in the short term. So that's a bit of background on it.
And to clarify, this isn't unique to Porter. I think this is a scenario that, I mean, this is in Duffel too. Like Duffel has these commands, and any other like CNAB tool would probably end up with these two commands as well.
Right. So functionally speaking, is there a particular scenario that is currently blocked? Like if leaving the commands the way they are, they all work as expected. At a technical level, that is, every user story is enabled, right? The signing works, the relocation works, the whole thing. The problem seems to be the UX of the understanding of the two code paths.
Yeah, I was in the air gap working group, and they were asking questions because they cared where these repositories were being created, especially in both cases. They were asking like what orgs were being created, where was it preserving the org structure, what was the actual like hierarchy of like where these images were being put. Like they were asking about like where Nginx would be, would it reuse Nginx if we had multiple bundles that referenced Nginx, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I
remember the
dug
conversation
into it and started writing documentation to put on the website and saying this is how relocation works for these commands in general, I realized that it's inconsistent, and it actually didn't match the answers we gave them in that meeting. And so I want to come back and just make sure that we all understood what it was really doing, and that we were like aware of it, basically, of how it worked.
Yeah,
and
no, I think it's great to
an artifact, an artificial artifact.
Mm-hmm.
And so one thing, Rada, we didn't talk about was the tagging, and how by introducing tagging in CNAB to OCI, we may be able to change what people at least see it. Like, for example, in the user interface of some of these registries, that may be able to help people understand better or guide their focus to what we want them to at least look at, and maybe look away from some of the warts.
I don't think this is a wart. I think Radu's made it pretty clear. His explanation is that there are different functionality that needs to be enabled in the different paths, right? And that's how they appear differently. I don't think that's a wart. It's the wart is really a usability, understandability. It's a transparency problem, because it's easy. I think you're right when you say, hey, it was worth calling out that publish and archive actually work two different ways.
You can't see it in this issue. I'm sorry, we walked through this last night.
Mm-hmm.
And in the archive scenario, because of how CNAB to OCI works,
mm-hmm.
we have to push up the images to the registry,
mm-hmm.
and then they end up doing a registry copy then underneath the bundle into a different repository. So you end up with two repositories being created, one from the initial push just to get it into the registry,
mm-hmm.
and then it gets then copied into a new repository. So you end up with two repositories being created.
Well, technically,
dangling one, not dangling.
Technically, you get with you end up with multiple repositories. You get with the number of images referenced in your bundle plus another repo for the bundle itself. So you end up with multiple repos.
Yeah.
And
So
you'll end up using only the bundle repo after all. But
that's the wart I'm referring to. It's this artifact, just because of how the implementation works for CNAB to OCI, and the fact that we needed to just get it into a registry in order to then copy it over to make the repository inside the bundle. So that's what I meant by tagging, be able to highlight and get people to look where we want them to look, and to ignore the fact that it made repositories elsewhere.
I think the way I was looking at it is, what I really rather do, or the thing that I think is the high order, bit, as they say. God, I hate that phrase. I gotta excise that phrase from my brain. What I think of as the most important immediate task is transparency. That is, there is a sort of, the way the UX in Porter works is so similar that you feel like it should be doing the same thing, but it's not, right? And so the real problem is, hey, whoa, what's it doing, right? Or like, now I need to understand the difference between publishing an archive and copying, right? So that is the problem. There is a transparency problem. I'm aware, it makes complete sense that we could solve this by modifying the code, right? And making a different stab at it. I think that's the right goal in the end. But given that I understand that these are basically different scenarios at the moment, I actually don't think we could definitely put tags on these things so that you could look in the right location, or at least find like tags are really, I think of them like breadcrumbs to the right location. You can follow the tag path to the correct item. But the real problem is that people just want to understand where the crap is going, right? And I think that if we ever get to a point where, you don't have to create multiple repositories, I think that's great. But I actually don't think that's really the core problem. The core problem is it's not transparent what we're doing in the scenarios. And so I sort of think, I'd be interested, that I'm more interested in clarifying the precise behavior in the tools for the users as it exists, and then scheduling the work items for, fixing them if it's possible to do, then I am interested in like digging through the code and making the change, immediately. Simply because I'm not seeing a scenario that is not enabled here. If that makes sense. I'm not even pushing an agenda, I'm just reacting to what I understand.
Yeah, this was less about there is something broken, and more just making sure that people understood that, one, we have two different technologies in play, Pivotal and CNAB to OCI, and then two, we end up with this intermediate artifact that's, I think at the moment, unavoidable. And I want people to be aware of it. Like, we're going to document how it works,
right? What
ends up being done, and Roddy's going to help make sure that that's accurate. And we want to evaluate if it was worth adding tagging to CNAB to OCI.
Yeah, and from my perspective, I now take tags to be basically fake labels that are designed to fool you, and I don't care. I hate them. I'm now anti-tag.
Well, the user experience is, if you pull up your favorite container registry that supports CNAB today,
right?
Do a Porter publish or a Porter copy or CNAB to OCI push for a bundle that has 10 referenced images. You're only going to see, if you do a CNAB to OCI push, you're only going to see the bundle tag in the registry, right? You believe that the 10 images have been pushed as well, And if you look at the OCI index, you're going to see all of them in the manifest list. But
Right.
in the UI, you're probably not going to see them. UIs, not because you don't have tags, but because UIs are not prepared to show that yet. Think about a multi-architecture
They're not
images
coded to display it.
think about multi-architecture images in Docker Hub. You kind of see that there are multiple. You see an ARM kind of small icon, and you see an x64 small icon next to the image, next to Ubuntu or whatever, as well as Windows for Nginx or something like that, right? If built, this functionality can exist in OCI registry UIs. The question is whether we should be adding tags for all the images or not. So essentially you end up with one repository, and currently with one tag that points to the bundle. If you try to pull that tag, it's going to pull the bundle, and well, you don't see specifically the images. The main question is, should you see the images referenced there? If the artifact itself is the bundle, it might give you visibility into the list of images or list of whatever artifacts are referenced in the bundle. And the only other advantage other than visibility you get is being able to Docker pull the bundle repo and the tag for a specific image. And I'm not sure how helpful that is, given that we automatically generate relocation maps on each registry operation with CNAB to OCI. So you get that automatically, and everything is referenced by a SHA as well. So I'm definitely open to having the conversation about adding tags to all images.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
definitely.
so am I. I just didn't want it to hold. I didn't see the immediate benefit as being
Right,
sufficient to hold up other work is all.
And thinking about the air gap meeting, what people were essentially asking was the functionality that the image relocation library has, which is, I have everything in my registry. I want to move everything over to my new registry and reference everything from there. And that is a fundamentally different behavior from CNAB to OCI, which primarily makes sure that you have everything in the same bundle. And if you have access to the bundle tag, then you also have access to every image there, which again, these are two different scenarios, right? And they enable registry visibility and image scanning and other things that are not visible as an application if you have 10 image repos, right? So I'm sympathetic to the problem that this might be very confusing to users. If they don't care where the images get pulled and they're not interested in doing anything other than whatever CNAB to OCI does automatically with image relocation, and if they don't need air-gapped environments, I would suggest that, yeah, CNAB to OCI will take care of pushing the bundle and images for you. And given that you have the relocation map, you don't actually have to think about where the images are coming from. You can, and they're all in the same repo. But yeah, you can, if you don't trust us, you can Docker pull the bundle repo at the SHA for the image, and you'll get the image. So,
as a use case, 90%, 95% case. Hi, Paul. As a use case, like nobody is going to sit there and it's like it either works or it doesn't work, right? There are nice features that they would like. I'd love to have the UIs display everything in a kind of friendly way, but we're not there, mainly because we don't own those UIs. And, you know, there are other things in flight in OCI dist that might change things, for example, or as in a config object and all this kind of fancy dancy stuff. But I do think developers who are looking at these tools want to know and understand how the tools work. And so I think the high order bit is documentation about the fact that these are different paths. They may seem in the UX to be the same path, but they're actually not, they're not the same path. And there's a couple of reasons for that. And the future might be different, right? But here's how they work now, kind of deal. If there's some scenario that is not enabled by one or the other, right, then that makes a difference. Then that would make a difference. I certainly don't have any problem with tags. I'm just not sure that it changes the fundamental structure, code path problem that I think developers wanting to understand. That won't change it. They'll still understand that stuff is going in or going in a different way.
I'd be a little worried about tags, just thinking about it, is that, so say I use CNAB OCI and I push tag V1 SHA ABC 123, and then later I push it again and it's a different SHA this time because tags move. What is CNAB OCI going to do, and what are people's expectations if the tag moves?
Tags bad.
CNAB to OCI will always use the content digest. We'll always use the SHA.
Yeah,
we use that in the relocation map, and we always use it in the index and everything else.
And now the tag is lying.
The tag would.
Do people expect then that we move the tag? Did they?
There are two very different schools of thoughts when it comes to tagging.
Yeah.
And I'm not in any way, it's way too early to get into the which one is better versus which one it will.
I think the point is, do we even want to be involved in that game?
Yeah, I'm like any step. So we had to build a system that used the SHAs as a way of trying to grasp at identity. And the reason we did that is because tags are lies. And this potential situation is we can use those lies to sort of make people relax. And I'm like, I don't want to even go there. That's my position. I'm like, we'll get it. We'll in the future, we'll figure out how that code path can be resolved.
I think how we can try and make everyone happy would be to add the option in CNAB to OCI to tag images when pushing, and surface that up into tooling flags. Hey, do you want tags for all the referenced images or not? And you would have the option to do it. It would be whatever value we decide by default, and that's it.
Even then, in the UI, most developers will sit there and say, why would I not want, what do you mean no tags? Most users, not developers. And they're going to sit there and go, I always want tags because tags are the thing.
Yeah, and the way that's part of the issue, right? The way we've been thinking about tags for a bundle, in at least in my thinking, a tag for a bundle repo represents a version of a bundle, right? And if I see V1, V2, V3, those are the tags for the bundle itself.
Right. That's what I've been thinking.
Behind that bundle, whatever manifests hides behind a specific bundle tag, contains everything needed. Yeah. Whereas if we were to add tags to everything, we would flatten everything out, and you would see if you have 30 different images and 3 bundle tags, you would have 33 tags into the bundle repo when you look into the UI. And I'm not, I'm not saying it would be better or worse. I'm just pointing out that you're going to have everything in there.
And I figure, like, if we document the behavior properly here, we could give the option of tagging. I don't oppose the option. I just, in the sense of, flip a coin, this is not a critical thing. I just think you're going to end up giving people the option to think that these tags all matter. And I don't want to give people the option. The tags are wrong, except for at the bundle level. The tags are lies. They are evil. Tags are inappropriate. I'm going to start ranting. Forgive me.
For the record, I wasn't that loud and vocal against tags.
No, you weren't. It's Ralph is the anti-tag person in this. Okay. Carolyn created a scenario that also, do we really want to get into that? Carolyn's scenario is plausible as well.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just anti-tag. I just think it's wrong.
I'm
at
going
this
to
point.
time box our little discussion here and just
Yep.
end with, I will fix the bug because that's actually what started this whole thing.
Sure,
is
sure.
I'll fix the bug. I'll document the behavior as is today, but not change anything beyond just the bug. And y'all can look at the documentation.
That'd be great. That'd be great.
Next week.
Yep.
And then we'll move on and talk about a community maintained harbor bundle, which would
Sure. Just really quickly, Paul joined late. Does he have, Paul, do you have an agenda item you'd like to throw in here before we knock off our last one?
Oh no, I just wanted to listen in and get a feel of some of the things that you guys are discussing. So I'm just going to be a fly on the wall if that's okay.
Yeah, no problem. The main item here is Ralph is anti-tag. He thinks they're lies.
I am not a fan of tags personally. So if there's a way to maybe obfuscate in an interface and connect it to some type of semantic versioning, that's, you know, just as a nice to have. But honestly, I think, you know, hashes are the way to go. Personally.
Now you're opening two can of worms, tagging and semantic versioning.
Yeah, dang straight. He's doing a twofer. All right. Well, yes, just be a fly on the wall. That's totally fine. What's the last item?
So sorry, I have a question before we move on. Just to clarify, CNAB to OCI doesn't copy signatures, right? Mostly due to notary limitations, I think.
Yeah, that is right. CNAB to OCI will only copy, images referenced in a bundle as well as the bundle itself and construct the index. Will not, CNAB to OCI is not aware of notary at all or tough data at all, other than trying to make sure the content digests match between whatever digests are local and image digest after pushing, and giving you the option to error out if everything is different. So the only part of signature that CNAB to OCI understands is individual content digests for images and the content digest of the resulting bundle after pushing. If they're different, it gives you the option to error out and not complete the operation, because it would invalidate signatures if they would be different.
Right. And we can't even copy signatures even if we could do it, because the domain name of the registry is attached to the signature.
Well, I remember the conversation about trying to copy signatures in Notary V1, and it's not necessarily a limitation about the domain itself of the name, but more of a limitation of the fact that Notary V1 keeps, well, you have a database in there somewhere. So you would have to query all signature artifacts related to a specific image and then try to reuse them in a new notary repo over to the new
I remember
registry.
that.
And I think that operation is too brittle for too little gain right now. So, that's my opinion.
Yeah, no, I remember this whole conversation. And so the concept, like the framing, the user story is you're going to drag something that's signed and completely relocate it. And the idea is somehow you're going to be able to reuse those signatures in an appropriate, what seems like a normal workflow for validation, verification. The problem is that conceptually, if you're going to relocate a completely signed chain, you have to have that chain infrastructure support it. And this is one of those areas where, boy, that's a lot of work that needs to be done before we get to support that, was basically my take. But the use case is that somehow you're going to move all these artifacts to a completely different trust structure, a new registry, new location, repository. But you think somehow the previously existing trust structure must work and follow you. And it seems to me that at a use case, looking at it from user cases, that's a hinge in which it's logical right now to defer that work until we have better tools and more resources, because you're basically jumping trust boundaries there. So why not jump completely is another way of
the functionality that CNAB OCI will give you is it will consistently tell you whether or not pushing the bundle to a registry or to a new registry or pushing it for the first time would invalidate your signature,
right,
because of different content digests of the stuff referenced in the bundle.
That's fantastic. That is exactly the hinge point that you get to choose.
Yeah, and it relies on the fact that if it doesn't invalidate your signature, you could still technically validate against the original trust server where that signature data was pushed initially.
Sure.
So if I moved something across, if I pulled something from Docker Hub and I move it locally and then I move it to an air gap environment, before doing that, technically, if nothing, if CNAB OCI hasn't invalidated my digest, I could technically verify my signature against the original notary server where it was pushed, or I could sign it again using my own notary instance that's local.
Right, and I'm expecting the use case as currently exists, following what you're saying. The use case workflow would work like this. Basically, you'd push to the new repository. CNAB OCI would tell you, hey, signatures are going to change if you do this. Okay, so then what you do is go ahead and do your validation as a known out-of-band step to make sure that you understand what's going on. You then move your artifacts into a new repository and establish a new trust base, right? The assumption being the out-of-band choice to move your trust base from one location to another. That is absolutely fine for right now. I think it's fine. I think we do look forward to having more tools, but more flexibility with things like Notary and other, trust databases, that in the future we might be able to jump that hinge in a very smooth way.
Specifically, we rely on the work going over in Notary v2 to be able to do that in the future. And
exactly.
Fingers crossed that's going to be able to happen.
Yeah, knock on wood.
Today, there's nothing stopping you from generating in toto links for all these operations.
Right.
Specifically, you could have a link generated when you initially pull the bundle from a registry, when you verify the signature from the original server, and then move it, and then generate a link again.
The workflow I described could be links in an in-toto flow, a larger in-toto flow.
Right.
Trishank, is that clear to you? Are we lying?
No, it makes sense. We could use in-toto links to record basically the copying, right? Between two notary databases. I don't think we need to go that far. I think this is the sort of thing we just need to make clear in the security spec before we consider it final. That's all.
I think it's fine to just point out this in an addendum to the security spec. I think that's a great,
Yeah, and I think you're right. It could even be an appendix or an additional item.
Can someone take an action item and put it in the notes or maybe an issue so that we get that taken care of before we do the vote?
Yep.
Sure. I'll add that.
I just realized that I haven't been taking notes for the past couple of minutes.
Right, I know.
I love you, Radu.
Yeah, we do. And mine is I'm on a new machine, so I haven't signed in, and now I got to remember mine. So I was gonna start helping, but then I bonk. What else? What else we got?
Can we move to the last agenda item?
A community maintained harbor bundle.
Oh, that's right. The last agenda item.
Yeah.
I put that on the agenda. A bit of background on this. Harbor now has support for CNAB bundles, for pushing bundles in version 2 that has been just released a couple of weeks ago. There are still some things in the UI that are, well, they could use some polishing in the UI, but the functionality is there. You could push and pull bundles. It works really great. On top of that, you could configure Harbor with Notary as well. So potentially Harbor and Harbor could be used for both registry and signature verifications for CNAB. So I think we're at the point where if we invested in a CNAB bundle for Harbor, that would configure both the registry and the UI and Notary. Those are three things, not both. But if you configure everything in there, it would make it very, very easy for people to try out both pushing and verifying signatures for bundles. And I'm happy to help on the Notary side and registry side on this. I think we would need some bit of help from Harbor people configuring it correctly.
Sure.
This from my experience trying to configure it either locally or in a cluster or anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah, and then probably someone with experience building CNAB bundles.
So I'm happy to help out here. So now, Radu, should we pursue contacts from, from Jeremy, or should we pick up the email trail that I had with the PMs?
Well, to be clear, I'm raising this because I'm sort of asking you whether you think this is helpful.
I'm clear which the directionality of this ask. In fact, I'm just asking what do we think is the most effective path? I can easily take the action item to pick up a conversation with the PMs, right? That's a no-brainer. I saw Jeremy, kind of wave in the Slack. We could also go from Jeremy, but I'm not clear that Jeremy has any direct connections with the registry people, the Harbor people, although obviously it's the same company. So I'll take an action item to follow up with the PMs, the Harbor PMs, and try and bring them into the Slack, and maybe we'll do something collaboratively there. And if not, we'll do it on email and bring it into the community.
Yeah, and to be clear, there's a Helm chart for Harbor v2, so deploying it in a Kubernetes cluster, again, should be easy.
But if it doesn't, we need them to help us out so we can make it easy. Yeah, exactly.
There are definite things that they could be helpful with when it comes to persistence and configuring everything properly.
Yeah, and we just want to show off and use their stuff with our stuff, and that's great. So no problem.
Yeah. Go ahead, Carolyn.
You had a question from Jacob about.
Yeah, I was seeing that too.
The CNAB tooling yet?
So do you mean? Wait, what do you mean, Jacob?
I just mean do we have any tooling to take an existing Helm chart and turn it into a bundle yet? We've got some of that internally that we've been planning to open source, but just wondering if anything exists right now.
So we have Porter lets you bundle a Helm chart.
Yeah, there's a mix-in that does it very easily.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't think there's anything that we know of where the Helm chart becomes a bundle, if that's what you mean.
Yeah, I'd like to look at what Porter does, I guess, first.
Yeah. Porter has a Helm 3, Helm 2, Helm 2 mix-in. There are 2 Helm 3 mix-ins. In fact, I should probably add a to-do, Radu, if you're having fun. Ralph has to finish working with Mohammed to finish off the Helm 2, Helm 3 integration.
Yeah.
So you can choose your Helm and drop your chart in, and bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah, kind of the last thing we're still need to figure out for our implementation is getting Helm OCI references set up for the Helm chart so that we can reference the chart itself as an OCI image, and then it should be pretty straightforward to package that up into a bundle.
Yep.
That's really that would be really nice, and it's one of the first things that I would put on the list of CNAB Core 2 or whatever breaking
Yeah.
change version we would have.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
The one other thing I want to point out about the community maintained hardware bundle is ideally I would really like it to have persistence and HTTPS and some integration with well, some sort of DNS like a reverse.
You want a running real world Helm chart ish thing. Yep. I'm with you.
This is why you don't let me take notes, guys.
Why don't we let you take notes?
Obviously, you're not reading the notes.
No, I can't. They're over here, and it's just something. This is less.
Well, then you'll find out later when they're published on our website.
Yeah, that's no problem. This. So, is this Sparta? Is that the one?
Yeah.
Yep, I like it. As far as I'm concerned, you can put those in notes anytime.
Perfect.
Anybody got anything else?
I don't. Anyone? Perfect.
Radu, can I chat with you after this? I got an idea about something completely different, unrelated.
Sure.
Fun. Okay.
Yay.
Right.
I'll give you a Zoom link.
Thank
Zoom
you
links.
everyone for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.